selected breeders that have 2 breeds of dogs that are available in very low numbers. Immediately to my right here, on your left, is Norma Wold. She's a very well-known writer, and she just told me she started writing about dogs when she was in 2nd grade. So I don't think that was probably published in anything but the local newsletter.
Just the school newsletter.
Yeah, but she's been doing this for a very long time. And then the other lady up here is Becky Van Houten, who I'm proud to say is one of my clients, and she breeds otter hounds. We had a discussion shortly after last year's meeting and started kind of putting things together. And I am proud to say that last year I was the veterinarian who was able to produce 3 otter hound litters in the U.S. And after you hear what Becky has to say, you'll have a better understanding of the significance of what 3 litters means. So, Canaan Dogs. This is a Canaan dog on the screen. And then there's otter hounds. So I'm going to let Becky start with her presentation.
So thanks for this opportunity to talk with you, and I'm glad you'll be able to hear me now. I'd like to start out by saying, unlike most of the people that have spoken over the last day and a half, I'm not an expert. I'm just a person who loves otter hounds. And I came to this breed when I was about 50 years old, so it's really unfortunate that I didn't discover this breed when I was younger, because I think I could have had a lot more potential. I live in Door County, Wisconsin, with my 3 otter hounds and my husband and my 2 little border terriers, and I have to tell you that living up there with them is just perfect. So I'm worried about the survival of the otter hound breed, and you'll see why. Fortunately, we have a wonderful person in the Otter Hound Club of America who has done a wonderful job with our database, and we have tracked almost every otter hound that has ever been around in the modern era. And so this shows you that this is the world population. This is not the population in the United States. So from 1981 to 1990, we had approximately 1,200 otter hounds. From 1991 to 2000, we also had approximately 1,200 otter hounds born. Each of those decades, that's how many were born. And they lived to be about 10.8 years of age on average. And from 2001 to 2010, we had a total of about 800 born in the world. So we've had a huge drop-off in our numbers, and it's pretty sad. You know, otter hounds have been around in the world for a long time. King John was actually recorded as having been one who had otter hounds and hunted with otter hound packs, and that was in 1199 to 1216. And the hunting of otters was probably the oldest organized form of sport, with packs of hounds hunting by scent in Great Britain. So actually, there were more otter hounds seen before World War I in Great Britain, at which time there were about 150 hunting packs, and they were not made up of only purebred otter hounds, but there were also some foxhounds and mixed breeds that were mixed in with that group. And then if you look at our numbers, we had sort of a surge in otter hounds from about 1986 through 97, and then we've started to go back down to mostly just 2-digit numbers per year that have been born. So when I talked to Patty about coming to talk to you today, she said, why don't you talk about what are good things about otter hounds? Because, you know, I've gone to some of the websites that are available on the internet, and when they talk about otter hounds, they say they're stinky dogs and they're not really suitable for most homes. Well, that's not true. And so I thought, well, maybe I would borrow from one of the late night programs and talk about the top 10 reasons to love an otter hound. And this is one of my babies that when he went to his new home in Florida and he got to go in their pool, He did just fine. So here you can see they range in size, number 10. They have good substance, ranging from 65 pounds for a small female to about 125 pounds for a large male. It's kind of a wide range. And then, you know, they were used for hunting packs. They still have great noses. And so here is one of our famous otter hounds, Barry, out with his owner doing a track. And we have had lots of people going into tracking, and especially recently, when we actually had 2 dogs that were in the AKC tracking event this year. Number 8, they're very attractive with shaggy coat and expressive face. Number 7, this is my Maddie. Otter hounds shed very little. So I used to have golden retrievers. Number 6, they enjoy sleeping by your side. This is Mikey. The dog's name is Mikey. We also know almost all of our otter hounds. Number 5, they're very curious, and here you can see Tasia with some otters. Number 4, they have a great sense of humor, and they're known as the clown of the hound group. And this is Louie, who was one of our dogs that won 16 Best in Shows. They're known for their good nature, and this is part of our breed standard. They're amiable, boisterous, and even-tempered. And so here's Tasia again with her brother Bubba at a dog show in Cape Cod. Number 2, and this is one of my favorites. They have beautiful voices and love to sing with their heads thrown back. The more otter hounds, the merrier. And every night, my husband and I feed the dogs, and we like to leave them downstairs while we have a glass of wine and just relax. And so we can hear them downstairs. Oh! And they harmonize beautifully. They each have their own beautiful voice. And number 1, heard most often. And this will be a surprise for you. Otter hounds are incredibly insightful toward the humans that live around them. They really tune in more than any other breed of dog that I have lived with. And so here's Maddie, and in June 2010 she had a litter that Marty helped us produce, and we had 9 babies. And they were anxiously waiting for their dinner. So otter hounds need help. And I was very excited actually to have the opportunity to come and talk, because what I'd really like for this to be, since I'm not an expert, I would really like this to be a dialogue where we can exchange some ideas rather than me telling you just about otter hounds, because I know you have a lot of things that you could help me with. Well, as a member of the Otter Hound Club of America, we have had concerns about what are we going to do about our breed. And the problem is really sorting out what are the really relevant and true problems, and what are some of the things that are maybe not exactly for real or not really relevant. So some of the things that we hear, I guess I would like to tell you first of all, we do have a few health issues. One of the health issues we have is hip dysplasia. And I think our breeders of otter hounds kind of came to studying the hips of our dogs a little bit later than some of the other breeds did. So I think we're making progress in terms of hip dysplasia. We have a problem with epilepsy. And I think there are quite a few breeds that have problems with epilepsy. We have been participants at the University of Missouri with the studies on epilepsy. We submit blood samples. We have about 284 samples on file with OFA of blood samples for the epilepsy study. And then we have another disease called Glanzmann's thromboblasthenia, and that is a bleeder's disease. And that is one that fortunately we can identify who is an affected, who's a carrier, and who is a clear. So we have been working on working that out of the breed, hopefully. So some of the problems we've been confronted with or we've discussed include some things that we have to really figure out how this is going to work for us. So one of those is breeders should not breed otter hounds until they're 3 years of age to be sure they've had their hips x-rayed and that they don't have epilepsy. So this has been sort of a theory that people in the Otter Hound Club have taken to heart. Another one that club members have concerns about is breeders should not breed dogs having any family history of epilepsy, which includes siblings, parents, grandparents, or anyone who has produced any dogs with epilepsy. We know that seizure disorders can occur at any age, but it seems that all seizures are considered epilepsy in the club. And everybody's very concerned about that. Another theory we have discussed is breeders should not breed to popular sires. And in a breed with 800 dogs, that's a little challenging because we have our dogs that are show champions and some very successful dogs. But what does that actually mean with a population of 800? How do we work with that? And you know, the other thing is that people take their puppies to the vet, and though breeders warn them, please don't spay and neuter your pet right away, the first thing the vet says, who doesn't realize that an otter hound is such a rare breed, is when are you going to spay and neuter this dog? And so we really have to work on helping not only our pet buying public, but we also need to help our veterinarians support us with this rare breed. Another one that comes up, there's a big concern in the club about not too many breeders should breed because this is a tough economic time, and we discussed this yesterday, so we won't be able to find homes for puppies. And then also the other one that we hear is breeders should breed only for health. And I think many of us feel that it's really important to maintain the breed type, the temperament, the conformation. So, of course, we value health as well. Now, those are concerns that have been expressed by the general population of the Otter Hound Club. And then the breeders also have concerns. And so some of the concerns of our breeders are that it's difficult to place otter hounds because no one has ever heard of them. So nobody is going to the website to look at otter hounds because it never occurred to them. They never thought about it. And so it might be a person who would be a great home for an otter hound, but if they don't know of it, they aren't going to look for it. Another one is probably the same one that I've already talked about, is the difficulty of finding studs because most puppies are neutered. Then we try not to overuse certain studs. And of course the other thing is you shouldn't use anybody before they're 3 years old. Then one of the ideas that we came up with a few years ago was the idea of having a semen bank. And this is sort of does AKC, they don't really allow us to have the club-owned semen, and so it's a kind of a complicated issue, but it might be a possibility because for some people I know, I've talked to some breeders who were saying they were going to dump their semen because they couldn't afford to continue to maintain it if they weren't going to have a specific purpose that they were going to use it for in the near foreseeable future. If that's happening, then we're going to lose the possibility of going back to some of the more distant, older stud dogs. Another thing that happens, and I'm sure this happens in other breed clubs, where because we have so few potential puppy buyers, we have sort of a competitive attitude between breeders who everyone wants to compete for the same potential puppy buyers, and so it's challenging. Many of our breeders, and I believe this is very important, want to develop a better understanding about genetics, and if we had a geneticist who would actually help us work with our breed, it would really probably help us work out something that might work better for all of us. And then a couple of other small things: how to get otter hounds out in the public venues to increase familiarity with the breed. And then the other little sort of, it's kind of not PC to market your breed or to say you have a litter of puppies for sale. And so how do you go about, as a breeder, letting the world know that there are otter hound puppies available? So we don't want to be seen as advertising in the paper to sell our puppies, but what marketing tools can we use to actually get the breed in front of the dog buying public? So I guess those are the kind of issues we have right now with otter hounds, and I'm going to let Norma talk about her breed.
Can I ask one?
Sure.
Are the otter hound people taking part in the Meet the Breed
Yes.
big shows?
Yes.
Okay, because I do the Plum Creek cluster in Denver in 4 days, and I'm in the hound group. And so I'm just trying to remember if and Louie always shows there.
Yes, Louie has participated in that
Meet the Breed.
at Meet the Breed, and we have participated at Eukanuba, and we're going to the Javits Center. In Wisconsin, we recently had the Badger Kennel Club, the Dane County Dog Fair, and we participated there. And I think, we're now trying to look at making sure that we have dogs, otter hounds represented if there's going to be a TV, a dog show on TV, because many people come to us from having watched a dog show on television, and then they'll say, oh, the otter hound looked really pretty. Yeah. Yes.
Great, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about Canaan dogs, because I think, in spite of the fact that I love all different breeds of dogs, I think the Canaan is the best dog ever. Sorry about that, folks. I'm Norma Wold, and I've had Canaan dogs since 2000. And my breed before that was Akitas, but I didn't breed Akitas. I did a lot of obedience work with my Akitas, and was involved in local Akita club stuff, but didn't do any breeding. So when I got into Canaan dogs, I wanted to also get into breeding dogs because it was a rare breed, and I just seemed to have this affinity for dogs that might need a little bit of help to survive. The Canaan dog, unlike the otter hound, which is a great old breed, the Canaan dog is a relatively new breed that developed from wild stock that is still wild in the deserts of Israel and the Middle East. The dogs were first brought into domestication by a doctor who trained them to be leader dogs for the blind in Israel. After World War II and Israel became a state in the late 40s and the British left, there were a lot of mines that were still buried underneath the desert. And rather than bring in sniffer dogs of other breeds, they started to use the dogs that were already in domestication in that area. And so the Canaan dog became a sniffer dog for detecting mines. They have very good noses for that, and they tended to be very light, and the mines were set to go off if somebody really heavy stepped on them, so the dogs were not in as much jeopardy as human beings would be going out into the field. The dog came to this country. There were 4 of them, and they were all black and white. They came to this country, and the people that were captivated by them worked very hard to get them accepted into the American Kennel Club. And that happened in 1997, was our first AKC National. I was down in Louisville, and that was my first real big exposure to the breed. I knew a couple of people that had them, but that was the first time I saw a lot of them. And this is a dog that, as you can see there, that's a very highly polished show dog. But the Canaan dog generally is a generic dog. And if you go on Pet Finder and you put in Canaan dog, you'll be really surprised at what you see. They claim are Canaan dogs. But it's a generic dog with prick ears and a curled tail of a size ranging from 35 to 40 pounds for bitches and about 50 pounds, 55 pounds for dogs. They shed a lot. They're double coated, and I fill a garbage can every time my guys come into their coat shed. So they shed a lot. So that's something we have to tell people. They also bark a lot. They are highly reactive to their environment. And so if you are trying to place Canaan dog puppies, really reluctant to place them in an apartment. Noise sensitive, sound sensitive. So they're really a dog for wider open spaces than an urban setting. Once we got them into AKC, I can't really say we, once the club got them into AKC, it gave us more opportunities to get the dogs out of kennels and into the public eye. And this was really great because of that first national. I would say there were maybe 50 dogs there, and probably 45 of them could not be touched by the judges without a great deal of patience and trying to get the dogs to stand still, because they were reactive to their environment, but they're very reluctant to be handled by strangers. So this was really very difficult. But now, after almost 15 years of exposure to dog shows, we have dogs that are still reluctant to be handled by strangers, but they're trainable to do the job. So we stand there with them, and they do really well in the show ring. It's rare to see one that really jumps away from the judge at this point. Some of them will pull their heads back, but they're nothing like they were at first. So AKC has really helped us with temperaments in our dogs. Either we exposed what their real good temperaments were, or we helped change the temperament, one or the other, I'm not sure which. Another thing that we have been able to do through being part of AKC is we have been largely successful in eliminating hip dysplasia because of the AKC emphasis, in part on health and in part because our breeders are wonderful in that area. We don't have any really serious diseases. We have had a neuromuscular seizure disease that's not the same as epilepsy, but it's virtually been bred out by careful breeding, not to go back to dogs that have had the problem. Unfortunately, I have an 8-year-old bitch that has that neuromuscular seizures. I was heartbroken because I wanted to breed. She's gorgeous, and I wanted to breed her. But she said, I don't want to be a breeding dog, I want to be a house dog, so that's what she is. So we've had the opportunity to get our dogs, we do the meet the breeds, so we get them out into the public that way, to get them to dog shows. We do a lot of obedience work. We're trying to maintain the herding instinct in the dogs, and we do a herding instinct test at our national specialties, and we have about 70% of our dogs pass our herding instinct test. And if they pass 3 times, they get a herding instinct excellent certificate from the club. So a lot of people really want to do that to maintain that instinct. So here we're trying to maintain that instinct. We're working on maintaining the high intelligence of the breed by doing a lot of obedience. A lot of people are getting into tracking. The dogs love agility. We have a couple of agility dogs that are really top agility dogs in the country. So we're very happy with all that, but there aren't enough of us. And we're in the same position as the Otterhound people are as far as having few litters a year. We maybe have some months no litters are born, some months as many as 2 or 3. So we're maybe averaging about 20 litters a year. Our average litter size is 4. Unlike the Otterhounds, we don't really have big litters. And a lot of our bitches aren't bred until they're 4 or 5 years old to make sure that that seizure disorder hasn't crept back in, because it usually comes when they're around 4 years old. So we have those problems. We have wonderful breeders who are ready, willing, able to refer to somebody else. If you don't have a litter on the ground or on the way, somebody else does. We refer to the other people so that we can get these dogs into good homes. As I said, we do meet the breeds, but again, the marketing, especially in a time when the economy is so bad, has been very difficult for us. So that's really kind of a capsule of the Canaan dog, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have and see what if I can satisfy them. So.
Okay, what I think we're going to try to do is get some questions if anybody has them for Norma, but also to try to use this as a little bit of a brainstorming opportunity to say, what are the things that can be done for some of these breeds? First of all, do we even want to try to perpetuate these breeds? And I think that these two women have pretty well been able to answer that question for us. So I think that's an important first question, but we've also got concerns with why is our gene pool going to be restricted? What do we need to do about it? We know we've got dogs that have affecteds and carriers, but we know if we're careful with our breeding program and the geneticists help us with those, we don't have to throw the dogs out. We've got spay and neuter issues, so we have a small gene pool that we need to expand. We have a small opportunity for the general public to understand what's going on here. So what are some of the things that we can bounce around the room here to provide for opportunities for everybody? In Wisconsin, there's a real concern about putting your name out there as a breeder, because our new act has created a situation where the state employees who are employed in the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection are out looking for people who may be breeding dogs. So it's a little scary to be any higher profile. So we've got a whole other political agenda here that we've got to try and work against. Yes, you have something?
Yeah, as far as getting the ability to keep more intact stock to work with, 2 things I recommend. One, when you send the Otterhounds or the Canaan Dogs to new homes, perhaps just using the longevity information we received today, using information like that to try to encourage potential pet owners of other reasons besides potential breeding to help keep more dogs intact. But the other thing is, if you're having trouble placing dogs in homes due to bad economies, perhaps try to encourage your breeders to look at placing dogs in homes without charging on a co-ownership, so they have the ability to retain breeding stock in a family home and environment that's a good home, and people who would be good homes but perhaps don't have money to come up with a purchase price for a puppy, get the dogs are around, and while it may not generate revenue for your breeders at this time, it would sustain the breed through bad economic times until the popularity of the breed increased. And the more of them there are, the more you'll increase your popularity.
Yeah, I'm going to just put down the lawyer hat for 1 second and say co-ownerships have their own set of issues. So it's not that it shouldn't be a consideration, but it has to be really carefully. AKC's not fond of co-ownerships. Yes?
But your contract can read such that this dog will not be neutered spayed, even if it's a pet for 12 months or for 18 months. And at that point, then I will sign off the papers so that your co-ownership is something. You are acting as a co-owner, you're on the papers co-owning and therefore controlling the dog's use. And then at the time that 3 years, I don't know what time frame you set up, then you're saying in the contract, at the time that it's decided that the dog shall not be used. And granted, this is probably going to maybe throw off some people that might want to purchase a puppy. But they just gotta know that they're buying into a rare breed, and as such, they have to buy into certain limitations, and that is they buy on a co-ownership, and then you go off the papers at a specified time at the time that they've decided it's maybe pet quality or you're not going to use it. Second question I had is, what happened in 2009? You had your numbers jump from 77 to 119.
It was just like a boom.
Okay.
A little, I don't know why. Just every once in a while, you have maybe more bigger litters. We never really have a lot of litters.
Right.
Although in 2010, people were really worried because in the United States, we produced about 60 puppies that year. And people were thinking, oh, well, we won't be able to place those puppies, but no problem.
Yeah.
If you have a small enough group and if you had a large litter and a small gene pool and they all became at an age that were breedable at the same time, you're going to have a boom from time to time. That's just going to happen. If you had 10 puppies and 6 of them are outstanding and you bred them all, you're going to have a change in your population.
I have a quick question for both of you. Do you know what the number of founding animals in your breeds were for Otter Hound and for Canaan Dog?
For the Canaan dogs, I don't know. I just know that the original dogs that came to this country, that there were just 4 of them, but I don't know about the subsequent importations.
Getting back to the idea of the semen database, keeping it all together, if you were able to have an efficient, I know the club can't hold the semen, but if you were able to figure that out, what you could do is collect all the males before they have all the testing done and before they turn 3 years of age, and if they do pass and they are an exceptional male, you could then use that semen, and then that would eliminate the need to have the dog still intact at that age if they do decide to neuter it.
Yes, that would be a good point. I think it's just a sort of a complicated issue, people-wise, to get it to work.
Actually, I was going to say almost the exact same thing, so I will add to it. And that is, if you ask your pet owners if they will have the puppies collected, so then they will have them neutered as they desire, and they can have their dog, but you've got the semen. If you were looking to do this, one of the things, because your club can't hold the semen at the moment, one thing that you might consider is, as a breeder, registering all the puppies to you, holding all those, holding the papers yourself, so that the semen and the papers belong to you. If you're collecting dogs, and when you're collecting fairly young dogs, their semen is viable and good, and it stores for a long period of time. Once you've known that, you can continue on with the testing. So there are ways to keep the semen without keeping the dogs intact. And then my next thought, I had a question for you. Now I can't remember it, so as soon as I remember my question, I'll raise my hand again.
I have some generic observations for both of you and then for all rare breed people. And to some level, I think you need to understand what's the minimal viable breeding population that you could ideally have. And that's going to be measured by the degree of heterozygosity you have in your breeding population now, with the goal of preserving it. You can never get more unless you outcross. But you need to be working with population geneticists to find out how many breeding animals of what type, and the limiting factor is the number of breeders. You can preserve all the semen you want in the world, but if you don't have a population of breeders working, that's another issue. So finding what your goal is going to be an important objective, and the rules for what is your goal population is going to be a generic. That can be applied to many different breeds. So maybe AKC or the Health Foundation can help you in that area.
So are you recommending that we contact the Canine Health Foundation to help us get started?
I don't want to tell the Canine Health Foundation what to do. However, there are a lot of breeds in your situation. If you could partner with other breeds and try and get someone to develop a rubric to identify, optimal heterozygosity within a breed. I don't know much about this Mars optimization chip. That could give you a metric to use, and that could be applied to many different breeds, so you could help track what numbers of animals breeding, what active breeders breeding, and what population size do you want to target. That gives you something to move forward. And as you're moving toward that, I would say put confirmation and any other aspect besides health way down on your list until you get there. Breeders do so well getting type established. That's one thing AKC does marvelously. Wait until you have a viable population to really put pressure on those features, would be my recommendation.
Okay. I had two practical ideas, I think. Do either of your breeds do much in terms of therapy dog work?
We have some that do.
I have a training Shar-Pei, and we're not thought of as being, cuddly kind of breed, that gets out there and does things like therapy dog work, but we've found a lot of good PR. We have a core group within the Chinese Shar-Pei Club of America that's now doing therapy dog work, and the publicity we get from that, from reading programs and from visiting in hospitals and nursing homes is tremendous. And, all you have to do is let local media know that you're going to go do a visit. Of course, let the hospital and nursing home know that you contacted the media, make sure it's okay with them. And then, you can get some wonderful publicity that way. One other practical idea I had in terms of, you said about the AKC wouldn't let you own the semen for a sperm bank or...
Won't let the club.
Right. Well, one of the things the Chinese Shar-Pei Club of America has done is we've set up two charitable foundations, one in our case for rescue and one for the genetic research. We were battling amyloidosis. And those two charitable foundations are, kind of controlled tangentially from the National Club, but they are separate organizations legally. And so they can do things that the parent club under AKC rules cannot. So.
Just very quickly about the therapy dog work. We do have Canaan Dogs working in therapy situations, and we had one Canaan dog that was the helper dog for a young man whose mother is a breeder, Canaan dog breeder, and he has one of the degenerative muscle diseases, and his dog was his service dog and received the AKC ACE award a few years ago. And this young man has since, because of his relationship with that dog, has gone on to be a junior handler, and now has another dog that he's working with as a junior handler and does a great job.
Quick question for you guys. Do you have any form of breeders' education committees within your club currently?
We are developing at CDCA, we're developing a breeder education. It's been really just kind of chatting at National Specialties, kind of thing where we'll have maybe a short talk or something, but basically it's been mentoring one-on-one and just some general kind of discussions.
What may work well is if you establish a breeders' education committee or just a quorum of breeders within your club, and then at National Specialties have geneticists come who's been briefed on your breed and the issues, have them look at it, and then come and present to your breeders at your National Specialty for a seminar the very specific things towards your individual breeds that would benefit them, so that all of your breeders can essentially get onto the same page for very breed-specific things versus more general seminars.
Do you guys have reduced fertility in the Otter Hounds?
Oh, here, Marty.
Becky's litter of 10 puppies, I think, was an acceptable size litter. I would consider, for the size of the breed, that was okay. And we had one other one that was a litter of six. That was with frozen semen, wasn't it?
Actually,
think it was.
No, they
Was
were
it? It
both.
was fresh.
They were both
Okay.
fresh.
Then we had one who had, she was a nightmare to breed because she didn't have heat cycles that were recognizable. She had heat cycles, we couldn't identify them, the owner of the dog couldn't identify them. And did she have a male in her house?
Yes, but neutered.
Yeah, she has a neutered male in her household. So it was very difficult to try and find her in heat. So we finally tracked her progesterone level on a monthly basis till we figured out when she had a heat that was unrecognized. And then timed her next heat cycle so that we could bring her into heat with Oviplant. But it had to be at the same time that the bitch who lived with the stud dog on the East Coast was going to be in heat, because the only time he would collect semen for them was when she was in season. So we were trying to coordinate a heat cycle in Wisconsin based on when she was in heat last with the heat cycle on the East Coast. And actually, it worked. Which was something of an amazement. She did have some puppies that weren't very healthy. They weren't very viable at birth. She lost some of the puppies in the litter. And we're not sure if it was a problem with a genetic tendency to have weakness, or if there was some placental problem, or if it was something that was viral, or we're not sure what the cause of that was. So I'd say there are some, but I don't think that litters of 2 and 3 is typical.
No,
either.
this year we had one litter with 12 and another litter with a litter in California that had 10 and a litter in Maryland that had 12. And I think our reproductive vets have really done a great job. Because I think almost all of them are AIs.
Okay, going back to the publicity thing, if you inform the local media and their response is, get whoever you're doing the therapy dog work for. If you're doing a reading program at the library, have the librarian. If you're doing it at a nursing home, have the nursing home administrator. Write a letter to the editor. If you've got somebody in your group who's a good writer, write your own story. I mean, it can't obviously be totally skewed towards the Otterhound. You've got to do it, the therapy work and the benefits of the dogs. And oh, by the way, the dog doing it happens to be an Otterhound, and we've got these really cute pictures. Teach your own one, because if you don't, nobody else will do it for you.
Was Louis' success in the Best in Show? I mean, how many times?
He was a 16 times Best in Show winner, and we had a bitch, Morgan, who was more successful. I mean, she was our top winning Otterhound of all time with so many Best in Shows.
And that did not translate into...
It still hasn't translated into more, it generates some interest,
Yeah.
but it hasn't given us increased numbers.
Are you okay with people breed jumping a little bit? Like if they already have their breed?
Are you suggesting you're...
Oh, switching over to a new breed.
Not
Sure.
switching over.
Adding to it.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a question. Are you as a breeder more likely to want to place your dog with someone that, doesn't have other show dogs or,
She's already...
Are
a
you
hound-
asking me personally? I don't have a problem with it at all.
She's already a hound person. I
So
think
it's
you would-
allowed to be a second breed for some dogs?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I think we have time for probably one more. So can we have somebody? Great, thank you.
I think you need to, your clubs need to decide whether or not they want the breed to become more popular. And if they do, they need to encourage breeders to advertise. I've seen a lot of websites where the location is not given. Or they may say like in the upper Midwest, something like that. And then people call and you tell them where you are. And in that way, isn't this stupid to have to avoid animal control? But at any rate, when I first got into whippets, I've been in college for a long time, and whippets were a lot more difficult to play than pick to sell. Nobody knew what they were. And after about 30 years in college, I was really pretty bold. And so I pretty much told the whippet people that they would see our name on bathroom walls if they wanted to, because we were advertised. And I told them we were doing it for education, because we were turning, we were convincing a lot of people they didn't want whippets. And we've got 10 people on waiting lists for our next 3 litters. And whippets are just not that popular. I really think you just have to get out there and say, okay, I breed, and I'm happy I breed, and this is a good breed, and the problem is working with the people more than anything else, because you do have so many breeders who just think you should never advertise. And I think you just have to get on the email list and call their bluff and say, damn it, if we don't advertise, how do people know we have puppies? You know, and you've got different problems, because you don't have the problems of, oh, well, if we advertise, then they'll pick a puppy for us, or whatever, you know, which is what, we had an ad on Next Day Pets for a while. And I tell people, it's mostly so we can tell people why they don't want a Next Day Pet. But we were just very bold about it, and amazingly enough, you know, people still talk to us.
Well, I think she brings up some good points, and some that Patty had started off yesterday with, and that sometimes we are our own worst enemy. I have corgis, and by the time somebody calls me about a corgi, they'll say, I already know the shed, and I already know if I don't have a fenced-in yard, I can't even talk to you. So I think we really need to start thinking about how we approach our interactions with the general public. I have friends in corgis that they won't return a phone call because it costs them money. Oh, come on, get a cell phone that's free. They'll only deal by email. I mean, there's just a whole lot of places that I think as breeders we put up some barriers, and you do have to be savvy about how you do this, and you have to be careful. But on the other hand, I think that there are times that we just really need to expand our horizons. So I hope this has opened a nice dialogue for people to continue to interact. If you have suggestions that you didn't have get a chance to communicate the names of these people in the program. If any of our experts out there would like to do the same, we'd sure appreciate it. So thank you much, and I appreciate you two being here.